These are the 3 most common reasons capital campaigns fail and how to avoid them. Reason for failure number 1, your leadership is not bought in. Now this can mean your executive team, your CEO, your executive director, your board. All of these parties have to be in total agreement that yes, we want to do a capital campaign, or we want to do some sort of a comprehensive campaign or project, focused fundraising initiative, whatever you want to call it, but they need to all have some agreement of like, yes, this is something we want to take on. We see the vision and the future of the organization being here. Doesn't matter how good your donor base is, how excited everyone is. If there is a mismatch in expectations from any of these groups and they're not all bought in on the idea of a campaign, the campaign absolutely will fail. We've seen this happen with large institutions where the board's bought in, fundraising team's good, donors say, yes, we're good to go, we want to do this, and the CEO wants to take it a different direction, and there's just fighting the whole time. And what ends up happening is almost no money gets raised and no one has funding for anything. So let's talk about the warning signs. How do we know that this might be a problem? If the board is not making their own pledges, even when asked, we know that they personally may not be bought into the project. The number 1 endorsement you can get from the board for any kind of fundraising initiative is, are they making a meaningful gift for them? This also could look like giving a way undersized gift. If you have a board member who could definitely make a $10,000 contribution and they are a little bit hesitant to do $250 or $500, they're just doing it to check a box. They have no interest in this project specifically. Hopefully they have interest in your charity as a whole, but you know that they don't want to do whatever the thing is. So you need entire buy-in from the board. The best way to demonstrate that, not just to the organization, but to the community at large, is that the board each makes a meaningful gift. Now, a meaningful gift for one person is gonna be a very different size than a meaningful gift from somebody else, but everybody gets bought in. This is why we try to avoid the like, oh, boards have to all give $1,500, or it's give or get $5,000. That's going to overstretch some people and it's gonna way undervalue others. So we just use the phrase meaningful gift. Every board member needs to give a meaningful gift. If they're not doing that, you might be in trouble. The next warning sign is if you have passive leaders, and passive being just the opposite of active. Active in a leadership position is being involved directly with their hours, their time, their effort, and their energy in the campaign itself. When you're raising a lot of money, or when you're intending to raise a lot of money, you obviously have to go to large donors and acquire major gifts, not just for the campaign, but to fund your organization as a whole. People who give large gifts, 10, 50, 100,000, especially if it's larger than 100,000, they very much expect to talk to the boss. So even if you have a phenomenal fundraiser who can help facilitate the ask and the relationship, and they can get it all the way to the finish line, most donors are not going to commit a 6 and especially not a 7-figure amount to a charity without sitting down one-on-one with the leadership, the CEO, the board chair, some combination of all these people, and just hearing about the vision. It's like, yep, I can invest big in your organization, but I want to hear it directly from you, what you plan to do over this next year. So important. If the leaders are not willing to do that or able to do that, it is very, very difficult to get those top-end gifts. And without those top-end gifts, your campaign is sunk from the beginning. So having that leadership being passive is a very early warning sign, and if they're not willing to change and be more active in the fundraising process, it's just not going to happen. Yes, fundraising is our job, but philanthropy, the process of making it all happen, is everybody's job, especially at the top. And warning sign number 3, fundraising is only delegated. So this, on top of just even being passive from the leadership, is like, oh yeah, you're a department, you're kind of on your own, you're on an island, you go do your thing and just bring me money for these things. If your leadership has some sort of attitude like this, where you're just like, oh, it's just the foundation, they'll bring in money, it'll be fine, it's going to be very, very difficult to be successful in a campaign. This is something that can be changed. You're not doomed if this is the case right now, but we're looking at a pretty aggressive culture shift to move from leadership just kind of delegates and stays hands off from the philanthropy process as a whole, as opposed to being involved when and wherever needed. For our clients who are in 9-figure campaigns, and we have a few clients who are trying to raise 100 million or more, the ones that are doing well, their leadership are all over the fundraising process. They designate a huge percentage of their job because they know they've got 1,000 things they're trying to do. But if they're like, hey, if I can sit down for an hour and talk to someone and make $250,000, is that worth my time? Absolutely, it's worth their time. But if they don't understand that and they don't see the potential for those large gifts, they don't have a reason to justify their time. So for us, we have to kind of bring those opportunities and shift that culture slowly, but so important that it's not just a delegated activity, but kind of a synergistic both ways, leadership, board, everyone's got to be on the same page. So you'll know if your leadership's not bought in, if you don't have this many-way communications about, hey, we know that fundraising is going to be for all of us, the development staff, the foundation staff. Yes, they're the ones who are doing all the administrating and the boots on the ground work, but we're involving everybody, and everybody is like, yep, whatever you need, we're all in. That's the first one. Here is how to fix that. Number one, engage them early. If you've already started the fundraising campaign or you're just about to launch and this is the first time you're interfacing with your leadership about it, again, it's gonna be far too late. Sometimes you almost have to a little bit make it their idea and have them kind of bought in on the idea and the process, but from the very beginning to like it's just talks. It's just the early beginning of the planning stages where like, hey, we might want to do a fundraising project. The first step should be talking to your board and your leadership about, here's what our vision is. We're raising X amount per year. We think we can do an $8 million campaign or a $12 million campaign. But if we're able to spend this money, does it align with the leadership's vision as a whole? Does it align with the future of the organization? We can go and get the information, will the donors support this? But we have to start with, does the leadership support it, and make sure they're involved in the process from the very, very beginning of the planning stages. Don't plan it all together and then pitch it to them. Make them part of the pitch so everybody's on the same page right from the beginning. The next is to set expectations. Most conflict in general, this is true of spouses, of siblings, of bosses and their employees. Most conflict comes from a mismatch of expectations. So we just set that right from the beginning. When people are on the board for the first time, yes, we have an expectation that you give a gift, not just on an annual basis, but maybe a little something extra when we do a campaign. And yes, we have an expectation that you participate in the fundraising process in some way, either by finding names or telling your story or going with us on calls or even making asks. Doesn't really matter, but we have these expectations set, not just from the board, but from the leadership perspective. So from the very outset, everybody agrees on what everyone's job is. If we get halfway into the process and say, oh, well, now we need this from the board, board's like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. But if we can avoid this by just starting early. And finally, training. Cannot tell you how many nonprofit boards are expected to fundraise with zero education and training on how to do it. It's just like, oh, you're the board, go figure it out. Maybe they're well-meaning and well-intentioned. They have no interest in learning how to figure it out on their own, especially. We have to provide them with information and training, again, from the beginning, early, as we set these expectations. This is from the board level and the leadership level, so that they understand how they can help, what their role is, how much time it's going to take, where their strengths fall and how they can play to those strengths. If they don't want to ask for money, they can help find names. If they don't want to help find names, they can go on calls and share their story. They can forge connections. They can bring on new board talent, whatever that thing is, but we need to train them how to do each of those things. If you do want your board to go and ask for money, you have to sit down and you have to do a solicitation practice with them. Make them practice live on each other in a low stakes environment where if they screw up the first couple, it doesn't cost the organization money. Get them comfortable with what to say, what not to say. If you need to bring in outside help to have them train, there's lots of firms like ours that do that pretty well. But regardless, you should be able to do this even internally, giving them some level of training around the philanthropy, around the fundraising process goes such a long way to getting that started. Reason number 2 your campaign might fail is not making data-informed decisions. Just kind of going for it. We see this a lot when organizations want to set a fundraising goal or raise money for a project based only on ambition and not necessarily on what the leadership wants and what the donors will support. Ideally, the perfect fundraising campaign has the perfect cross-section of 2 things. So here are projects or initiatives, whatever you want to call it, that leadership, so your board, your exec team, will say needs or wants. The things that they've identified as important to the organization. We need to invest more money here. We need to serve more people here. These are all the things that they'll invest in. And then on the other side, you have projects that donors will give to. If you do a campaign, on this side of the Venn diagram, you're going to raise a bunch of money for something that is not necessary or not needed. Maybe it's great, maybe it's helpful to someone for something, but if we're just raising money for the sake of raising money, we're not focusing our energy, we're not focusing that funding towards something that's going to be impactful. If we instead say, oh, we've identified the perfect thing, we know what's going to be the most impactful. A parking garage, new IT system, these things that aren't necessarily as mission focused but are are necessary. Yes, it will be the right thing, but you're gonna have barely anybody give to the campaign. So what we have to do is what I'm sure you're guessing, is we wanna live right here. This center of the Venn diagram right here, this is the decision that data will help inform. We need to find out what projects the donors are excited about supporting. We need to find out what projects the leadership are wanting to do. And it might not even be a list. The leadership might say, this is the project. And we have to hope that there's some overlap here with the donors. And sometimes we have a multi-pillar project. Here are the 3 priorities. Maybe some of them skew a little bit further toward the leadership side. Some of them skew a little bit toward the donor side. But the closer we can live in this area in the middle, where everyone's like, yep, this is the thing we need, the better off we're gonna be. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're getting value out of this but would like something more personalized, you can book 30 minutes with one of our experts to see if you qualify for our support services. Link below in the description. Here's how you live in that middle section to make sure that your campaign doesn't fail because you're choosing the right thing based on data. You want to look at the warning signs, of course. First is going into any kind of big fundraising initiative or project without conducting a feasibility study. We're just going right in. We're going to go right into our silent phase. We have no idea if our donors will support this or not. We don't know how much money we can raise. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't even know who to ask for money. We're just going to go for it. Leadership says campaign, we're launching a campaign. That's the only data we collected. If we don't have a study to be able to support this and maybe think, hey, are the donors excited about this? Are the leadership bought in? Do we have enough prospects at each of the giving levels? Is 5 million a realistic number? Is it going to take us 2 years or 8 years? All of these questions we want to have a firm answer to before we even begin the quiet phase of the campaign. So often we see this, people kind of launch right in and it's not helpful. We have to have some sort of data on the front end so that we can then use the data to make all the decisions, set up our case for support, decide who we're going to ask for money, all of it. But we have to start with that study. If you don't have any donor pipeline for major gifts, if you can't answer the question, who are we going to go to for major gifts, it might not be a good time to launch a campaign. We have to have some understanding of like, okay, we've generated a list of names, either using the feasibility study or using our past donors, using supporters of other charities, using contacts of our board, of our leadership team. If we don't have some way to build an initial prospect list of people that we're pretty sure will give something, it is such an uphill battle and so easy to fail because we're not going in with any information on who we're going to talk to. Say we do declare the campaign, so we're going to start. It's like, okay, well, the first step is we're going to go ask somebody for a lead gift. We're going to try to find a major donor and get them to get a big chunk out of the way as a place to start. If then you're like, we have no idea even to where to begin to find that person, it's like, well, that's probably something we should have decided. It's too late now, we've already launched, we can't go any further because we don't have anyone to approach for that gift, but we haven't done the research to find the people in the first place. Again, feasibility study is a great way to do that. We have some YouTube videos on how to execute that properly, so definitely check those out on our channel. But just to go over it quickly, you want to have some semblance of who you're going to talk to for those initial gifts, and we can't start without that. Third warning sign, no history. If we don't have any historical data based on the giving patterns of our donors, or even if we're looking at giving patterns of our community, say we're a brand new nonprofit, totally fine, you can do a campaign as a new nonprofit, but you should be able to look outside of your organization, into the community at large and say, how many people tend to give about in this range? You can Google annual reports for nonprofits of your town over the last 2 years and kind of see, do we have enough $10,000, $25,000 donors? Is it the same 5, 6 people giving every time? If so, do we have connections to those people? Could we actually sit down and see if they would fund something like this? It's like, oh, the Smiths, they support everything in town. Their name's on all kinds of stuff. Great. I would start with, does anyone on our board know the Smiths? Do we know the Smiths? Does our CEO, does our executive director know the Smiths? Can we sit down and say, hey, we're not in a position to ask you for money yet, but this is the kind of project we're thinking about doing. If we were to do something like this, A, do you think this is something you might want to support? And B, do you know anyone else who might get excited about this that we could approach for some potential lead gifts? So if we don't have any of that information, we don't have any histories to support that, very difficult to know if we'll go in with data. And if you don't have data, again, the likelihood that you fail is much higher. There's great data, ironically, on this about campaigns succeed less than half the time. Less than half the time. Charities' campaigns fail without a feasibility study. With a feasibility study, it's like 4 out of 5 or 8.5 out of 10. It goes way, way up, almost doubles the likelihood that they'll succeed. Almost entirely takes the risk out of it just by doing a study on the front end so that we can start from a data-informed place. If you're operating with no data, here's how you fix it. You want to conduct a feasibility study, of course. That's the easiest and first thing to do. You're going to get all the data at once. It takes roughly 3 months to do this, which feels like a long time, but if you're going to run a campaign for a year or even multiple years, definitely worth it just to start with, hey, let's get our whole roadmap, our whole playbook, our list of donors, our project. Let's make sure that everything is feasible, which is why we're doing a feasibility study, and starting that on the front end. Second is we want to do a deep dive on our past performance. If we have a CRM, even if it's just Microsoft Excel, list of donations, we want to look back at all the historical fundraising data that we have and use that to help predict future fundraising decisions. It is not as simple as, well, last year we raised $300,000, so next year we might raise $300,000 again. It's like, well, have you ever done a campaign before? All of those people who gave kind of automatically, have we ever asked them for an outright gift? There are tons of questions that are more deep dive type questions that we can ask and analyze as past performance. This might be part of the feasibility study. That hopefully if you have a firm that does this for you, they're going to do that as part of their data collection. But you can do this on your own without an outside firm. You can just look at your past performance and say, hey, do we have the donor base to support this? Do you think we have the bandwidth based on our history to support the future of a campaign or growth, just growth of our fundraising program in general? And finally is to do a little bit of prospect research. And if you have the capability to do well screenings, you can do that as well. If you have well screening tools in your database, they're not always accurate. They're accurate maybe 60% of the time, so over half the time that they're going to get it right of how much money someone might have. It kind of looks at a whole bunch of factors like property value and giving history with other organizations and political donations and known assets and that kind of thing. Most well screening tools, their software and their algorithm for it is proprietary, so don't really know exactly what gets factored in, but most of the time we can say, hey, this is a pretty good indication. So we can take all of our existing donors, our consistent supporters, put them through a well screening and go, okay, do they have more capacity than we're giving now? Like someone who's given $500 a year for 5 years in a row, and they have the ability to give a six-figure gift. Have we ever asked them for a gift? No. Well, that's a check in the right direction for, hey, if we have a bunch of those, we might have good data that we do have more capacity and we just need to find the right project. Again, going back to that Venn diagram of overlap of here are the things the donors are excited about. You can go and ask them. That's the beauty of a feasibility studies. You can literally just ask them. And then on the other side is the leadership excited about this? Is vision-wise, is to support the organization kind of long-term? The third reason a campaign will fail is not investing in your fundraising staff and support. Not putting enough seed money in the beginning to make sure the project actually does come to fruition. If you're trying to raise $20,000 or $25,000 or $30,000, you can certainly expect to spend 5% of that, maybe even a little bit more, up front to get the project started. It's very, very important that we can't go in like, oh, campaigns are just this gold mine. We raise so much money. It's potentially, yes, but there's some structure and strategy and training and research and data collection, go down the list of all these things that we want to do. And that requires usually a couple of months, sometimes up to maybe 6 months of building and putting things in place where you're not going to make as much money, or maybe you make the same money. You're still bringing in some philanthropic revenue, but you're investing a little bit more than you're bringing in. But then hopefully then it skyrockets. And you can see this with nonprofits all the time saying, well, they raised 8 million and they raised 50. How are they doing this? It's like, well, they probably had some sort of a feasibility study in the beginning to make sure that they had a data-informed decision making. Their leadership was probably pretty bought in on the project. Their donors are pretty bought in on the project. They had a great plan in place, but getting all that put together cost both time and money. And the organization was willing to invest in that time and money to get the staff supported so that they can be set up for all the things that they need. Here are some of the signs that your staff may be under-supported to launch a campaign. If your staff is already stretched thin, as in they already at their 40-hour capacity, and you're like, and on top of everything we're asking you to do, an additional 20 hours a week of work for the campaign. Probably not gonna work. If they're at their capacity, you're either gonna have to replace some of the responsibilities, hire additional help, or just change the structure so they can focus on the things that are more revenue producing. But if they're already stretched thin, it's very difficult for them to add then a campaign on top of what they're already working on. If there is no dedicated person whose primary job, or at least the bulk of their job, is to help run and administrate the campaign, and again, this can be outside counsel or it could be in-house person, but if there's not someone who's close to full-time working on this, the likelihood that you're able to get a multi-7-figure campaign from start to finish is extremely low. The alternative would be you have a huge group of super bought in volunteers. That is possible, but still you need someone to kind of own the task. There's kind of a central hub. Maybe they're not doing all the fundraising, but they're connecting all the dots. They're moving all the pieces. They're the strategist person. You have the board over here. You have the exec team over here. You have some fundraising committees. You have your donors, and they're not all going to talk to each other. So having someone in the middle to be the intermediary in between all of these groups, just to be the voice of, I'm gonna help kind of strategize and put all the pieces together, almost like a manager would. If you don't have that dedicated person, it is extremely difficult to do a multi-7-figure campaign. And again, if any nonprofit can run a 7-figure plus campaign if they have some support and at least one person to help run it. The third sign is if it's volunteer run with no outside guidance. So not only do you not have a dedicated staff person, maybe your volunteers are super bought in, they've got half a dozen people and they're like, yep, we're gonna spend extra time, we're gonna 5-10 hours a month each between all of us. We have more than 40 hours a week of time that we can dedicate to this. And they don't have any kind of outside strategist or someone to help kind of guide the activities. Very likely that it stays pretty scattered and disorganized. Again, those volunteer hours, those 100 hours a month you get or 150 hours a month are only useful if they're all pointed in the same direction. We already have limited time to spend on this, and if they're not all pointed in the same direction with specific strategy and structure and kind of that reassurance that what we're doing is the best use of our time, very difficult to go without outside help. Here's how to fix that. Hire temporary help. It doesn't mean you have to grow the size of your staff permanently. Just say, hey, we're gonna be in campaign mode here for a couple years, so maybe we bring in some resident counsel, maybe we bring in a consultant, maybe we bring in a consulting team, maybe we bring in an additional half-time person. Could we hire some administrative or database help to then free up our primary fundraising staff person to go out and do the fundraising? Can we get a couple of interns to do some of the admin and clerical work? Pay them a little bit, get them some experience, get them excited about the nonprofit sector, while also getting additional hours for our primary fundraiser to get out in the community and make asks. If we're feeling like we're up against it in terms of we don't have enough time, we don't have enough resources, again, a temporary boost just in outside help or inside help, however you want to do it, just temporarily makes a huge difference in freeing up that time so they can dedicate those extra hours to the campaign. The next is training your staff and board. A lot of times, especially if there's one person in your fundraising staff, they may not need extra help, they just need to know where to focus their efforts. They may be doing 1,000 things already. Again, we kind of looked at, they're stretched thin, they're already at 40 hours. Well, let's talk about what specifically they should cut out and plug in instead to run the campaign. There are certain things that they just won't be able to do. Everything they say yes to is something else they're saying no to, which is in many cases fine. We've had plenty of clients with just one dedicated staff person be very successful in their fundraising efforts if they check the boxes of leadership, data informed, and investing in a little bit of support to get them enough training to know what to do next. Just to say, hey, it is possible for a single staff person to get this done. We just can't afford any mistakes. They have to do it right. They have to have the exact activities month to month to make sure that their time is well spent. So you don't have to hire more staff necessarily, but you do have to optimize your existing staff with training on how to do this correctly. And the third fix is to do a great job with stewardship. On average, it costs anywhere from 5 to 7 times the same money to acquire or find or bring in a new donor as it does just to keep your existing donors. This is true even of just mail. Like on average, when you send a fundraising solicitation through the mail to your existing donors, it'll cost you roughly 20 cents on the dollar to bring in that money. So every 20 cents you spend, you'll make about $1 on average. That's for existing donors. To capture new donors who've never given to you before, it costs anywhere from $1 to $1.50 to capture $1. So not only are you only breaking even in many cases, sometimes you're having to go into the hole just to capture those new donors. So again, stewardship being something that nonprofits as a whole just do a terrible job with. Like the retention rates for donors last year was like 43%, all-time low, really, really bad. But the charities who are doing this right, they can keep the people who giving again and again, and then as they acquire new donors, it only adds to the base of their support. Imagine you're trying to get a raise at work. Say you make $50,000 a year, just to make the math easy, and you're like, well, I'm gonna get a $5,000 raise so that every year I get an additional $5,000. You push for that raise, you pitch for that raise, you get the raise. Oh great, I'm at $55,000 a year now. Except for then your boss says, well, you're not doing this part of your job anymore, so we're actually gonna do a salary cut for $5,000. It's like, well, I'm right back where I started. I did all this work to get a new raise. I was working hard in this area, but because I lapsed over here, I lost the same money and actually worked harder, and now I'm still at $50,000. This is the same kind of concept we see with nonprofits who are churning and getting new donors. It's like, yes, you're finding new people to give to you all the time, but because you're not doing a good job of stewardship, the people who gave to you in the first place stopped. And now you're having to find new people over and over and over, as opposed to just spending a little time stewarding them to make sure that as you get new people, your base only grows from 50 to 55 to 60, all the way up. If you want to learn a little bit more about stewardship specifically, we got some great videos on that. You can check those out for free on our channel. Just kind of Google Pride, Philanthropy, Stewardship. They should come right up. So don't want to go too much into that, but just know if you're doing a great job with stewardship, you don't have to invest nearly as much in the staff and the support because you're investing in keeping your donors consistent and with you for the whole time. So hopefully now you have a better idea of whether you're ready for a full fundraising campaign or not. And if not, what are the things you can do to help fix and get ready to raise a lot more money? If you want to talk to one of our team members about some more customized help, or want to get specific about the things that your organization can do to be ready for a capital campaign or a campaign of any kind, you can go to pridephilanthropy.com and click that Let's Chat button to book some time with one of our team members. If you feel like you got good value out of this and you watched all the way to the end of the video, we would really appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel. We're trying to build the largest free resource for fundraisers on the internet, and all that we ask in exchange is for you to engage and share our content. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next video.